This video will go over the installation of the QBOT on a Gammill. For the purposes of this particular machine, this is a Gammill Premier, but the instructions are similar for the Optimum, Optimum Plus, and the other machines as well. This particular machine has vertical wheels on the axle, and these wheels are actually the Edge Rider wheels. Your wheels might be different. They might be the original black wheel, but the installation is identical. The first item to install is the Y-axis drive assembly bracket. And on this particular machine, this is what the bracket looks like. What's important is to note how it is mounted to the wheels. We take the original screw out of the wheel and then replace it with this screw, a washer, then the bracket, and then on the other side we have another washer and then an aluminum spacer, and the spacer rides up against the bearing that's in the Edge Rider wheel. Off or disconnected from the machine here, I have the same Y-axis bracket, and the composition, it looks like this. It's got that screw, a washer, then we go through the bracket, a washer, and then the aluminum spacer, and the remainder of the screw, which then screws into the axle. So first we mount this bracket to the axle in the front, or toward the needle side, and in the back, toward the back of the machine. And we tighten these screws with a Phillips screwdriver. And we make sure that those are pretty tight. The next thing is we install the drive assembly, and that's this bat wing or boomerang wing looking thing right here. The drive assembly amounts to this piece using this screw right here, which is 1.5 inches long and 1/4 inch diameter, so it's a 1/4 by 1.5 inch long screw. We have a aluminum spacer right here, which is the same. It's a 1/4 inch aluminum spacer, a washer, and a nut, and we tighten that in the front and the back. Then the Y-axis drive assembly is attached to the machine. The next drive assembly that gets attached is the X-axis drive assembly, and on these machines I find it easier to mount the drive assembly to the wood bracket first. So here we have it, and note the orientation of the screws. The screws are coming in from this direction, so we put it in the reverse and then tighten the nut here and here, and you can tighten that down so that it's tight. There's a screw, and then the washer, then the drive assembly, and then the nut. And go ahead and make sure those are tight. Now we also have, through the bracket here, a screw, a washer, and then the bracket, then a aluminum spacer, a washer, and a nut. When that bracket comes to you, that's the way it comes kind of pre-assembled. You take off the nut in the washer, and then I don't have a lower carriage here for the video, but I'll pretend this table right here is the lower carriage. And there are holes in your lower carriage that these two screws go through. So we'll pretend that those are the spacer is up against the bracket, which is a right angle piece of aluminum on your carriage. The spacer rides up along that bracket, and the screw goes through the hole that's in the bracket. Now some Gammill systems have 4 wheels on the back track, and in that case this may replace one of the axles that the wheel goes through. On other Gammills there's only 2 wheels in the back, and then on those there's just a hole in the right angle piece. This funny looking lollipop shape or donut shape here is an open hole that allows the screw, or the nut actually, that is on the end of the screw that holds the encoder for the machine stitch regulation. That's just a space so that nut can fit in there. The bracket goes up against, or pretty close up against, the within 1/4 inch because of that spacer, to the back rail, and then that's mounted tight. So once that's in, tighten all that up. The bracket, this wood piece is spaced off 1/4 of an inch due to that spacer. And then the right angle piece that holds the wheels for the lower carriage, that mounts in there. Then the washer and then the nut, and you tighten that up. Okay, so once that's done, that's the two major things that you need to install. Then we move on to the wire holders, and the wire holders, drive wire holders, look something like that. It mounts on one side of the rail and like this on the other side of the rail. So we're going to do a little bit of pretending here, but these edge rider wheels, or the normal wheels, they ride in a track that's about 1 3/4 inches wide, I believe, and there's a little slot in the middle and those ride in it. And then let's just pretend, we'll pretend that this piece right here is that rail. Now, on your machine and frame, the distance, we're gonna do this as the y-axis rail. You will mount these nicely just like that. Let's see. Just like that. And you can see there's a little slot there for a screw. You move those to the end of the rail. We'll pretend that this is the end of the rail right here. And some of them have a black cap on the end. So you'll have, unless you want to remove the black cap, which you don't have to do, you'll bring this in and mount it right about there. And then you'll notice where the hole needs to go right here. And we provide a drill for you to pre-drill your carriage. Then you use the enclosed short screws to screw that on and make sure it's tight. Once that's done, you attach the wire with the eyelet onto one end like that, and then come down here while you're holding tension. You're holding tension, and then you'll wrap the wire over the top or the bottom of the drive wheel. On this particular installation, on this one, the wire is going to come off the bottom. On Optimum Pluses, the wire comes up off the top. So you'll wrap it twice around that, and then you would have installed this on the other end just like so. And then the other end of the wire doesn't come to here. We actually use a turnbuckle like this. You'll loop this end of the turnbuckle through the eyelet, and then this end of the turnbuckle, which is the eye, will go onto the hook, and then you turn the center of the turnbuckle to get tension in the wire. So that'll draw the ends in and tension the wire. And we have a video on our YouTube channel that shows the tensioning of the wire. It should sound like a very tight piano string. Then what you do, or guitar string. So then once that's done, that really completes the installation of the y-axis. Then you do the same thing, the same procedure for the x-axis. You mount each of this, one on one end and then one on the other end. And then you use the tensioner, which hooks onto this side here. The wire is going to be in here, and you use the tensioner turning only the center barrel. You make sure that this end doesn't twist, which it can't because it's on the hook, but make sure this end doesn't twist, and then twist the wire, because that will add a lot of stress into the wire and cause a premature damage to the wire itself. So you really just want to pull that in by turning the center barrel until you get tension in the x-axis. And that completes the assembly of it completes the installation of the drive assemblies for both the y and the x-axis. The next thing up is we take advantage of this post here, this spool pin holder here, and we include 2 washers and 2 extra nuts. So you take this off the machine by using a 1/2 inch wrench and loosening this nut, unscrewing this piece, screwing on a nut, putting it on a washer that we provide, then slide that through the QBOT bracket, then put on another washer and another nut, just like that, and then you tighten that together. Put this nut on, and then thread, actually before you tighten this, you thread it all into the machine and then tighten this bottom nut So there's a total of 3 nuts, one there, and one here. The 2 washers, one there and one underneath. You tighten this nut to make sure that the post is tight again. Then the QBOT head looks just like this, right here. And you plug in your wiring harness, which is right here, the X and Y. And then use the enclosed strain relief pads and wire ties along the side of the machine to keep everything secure. Just like so, right here, and then we come over and clip into the Y-axis right there. And then the X-axis, when it is installed, you'll clip this, and then clip it to the drive assembly, which will be, let's pretend it's right there. Click, and you make sure that that's all clicked in. Then you're ready to watch the videos for QBOT V3 and get accustomed with using the QBOT itself.